Hello and welcome. My name is Vanessa Ortali. I am the founder of the Ladies Community and Heart and Mind Talks. Today we have a special guest for our online summit, The One. And the theme of this summit is one with self, one with others, one with purpose. And I have Amanda Koziel, who is a strategist, particularly for sales leadership. And so what I wanted to bring her in to chat about today is how being one with self will actually make you better at sales and will also help you to better connect with others through sales as well as leadership and building and leading your team so that you can see more success and it doesn't have to be just about you. So welcome, Amanda. I'm super happy to have you here and chat.
Yeah, so excited to be here. Thank you so much, Vanessa.
Yeah, and I want to actually start out by telling people how we met, because we're always talking about networking, and I was actually on your summit talking about networking, and I
Yeah.
want to show you the power of stepping out of your comfort zone and not knowing people and then meeting amazing people like Amanda. So I had a ticket for a conference, had nowhere to stay, and I went super last minute and I had to ask someone, hey, I don't know where to stay. Do you know anyone? And they pointed me to Amanda, and Amanda said yes. And she said, hey, we had no idea who each other were. We maybe had 5 words over text, and we ended up being roommates for this conference. And that's kind of how relationships start. So just say yes, put yourself out there. It wasn't comfortable, right? For neither Amanda or myself, but it wasn't a big deal. Like we both didn't think it was a big deal. So
Yeah.
just go out there, do you, and do things that you like, and you'll meet amazing people that are like-minded.
Yeah.
Like Amanda.
Honestly, you know what? On that note, it's such a good example too. Just like whoever you meet, like you never know who they're going to introduce you to. You know
Right?
what I mean?
Yeah.
Like little did we know our common friend Tara was going to
Yeah.
be able to introduce two of us. So
See?
just goes to show.
Yeah. So tell us more about you, Amanda, and then we'll dive right into this leadership and sales, because I know so many people need help about it, and there aren't too many women teaching sales. And it can be a
Oh yeah.
very intimidating topic. And I know the theme of the summit will help to make it a little bit easier for people to understand.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I'm so excited to talk about this because it truly is my passion. Because exactly what you said. I mean, I've actually been in the leadership and sales development industry for over a decade. And what I noticed was that there really is a gap. There's a gap for two different reasons. The first gap I saw is that women leaders and women mentors, I just feel like they're harder to come by. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like some people, when they hear leadership and if they think of like thought leaders in the leadership space, you sometimes think of like automatically John Maxwell, for example, is one person that comes to mind for a lot of people. And he's amazing. There's nothing wrong with John Maxwell. But what I found from talking to women is that they really wanted like a fresh approach, and like a more relatable approach to modern sales and leadership coaching. And so a little bit more about my background. As I said, I've been in this industry for 10 years. Most recently, I had my own sales team. So I actually coached over 25 people, specifically on sales. They were franchise owners, so business owners, both men and women. And what I learned from that was that sales coaching in particular is such a skill that, obviously people that are in the profession need, but it really goes without saying that we all are in sales. You know what I mean? And I really, since I worked one-on-one with these people, I really got to understand like what are the hangups that people have about sales, and why do so many people feel so icky about it? Or there's this stigma about sales that like, it's slimy and that you have to pretend and like be somebody you're not to get the sale. And so I learned a lot, after coaching these people over the last few years. And so
Did
most
you notice
recently,
the difference between the approach that males and females took? Was there a difference in how they viewed sales and then their approach to sales?
I would say that I actually worked with mostly women. So
Mhm.
ironically, I had both, but I would say that a lot of women, they were more hesitant to really like go after the close. Like for whatever reason, women felt really uncomfortable asking for the order or like actually asking for somebody to purchase something. So I think that it does go back to like, the feminine masculine energy that a lot of us know maybe a little bit about, but a lot of women don't really feel comfortable asking for their worth. And so I found that even when it came to pricing, like they were sometimes cutting their pricing, a little bit more frequently than maybe the men were on the team. So I do think that there is, from what I saw, at least in my team, that there was a difference in what women were comfortable asking for compared to the men on my team.
Yeah, I've seen the same thing. I've seen just women be a little bit more timid about the ask and how they appear to the other person. Like, I don't want to appear
Mhm.
too pushy, and so it's been really interesting. And I know you're helping so many women get through that. And tell us more about what that looks like and how people can be better at sales.
Yeah, and so that's why I founded. So when I first came up with the VIP Woman, it was last year, and it was really meant to be this platform to have conversations like this, right? Because I realized that a lot of women, like, they weren't really taught, like, they knew that they felt uncomfortable about it, but they weren't really like sure what it was, like why things felt off. And so what I found was that a lot of it is just getting clear with who you are and feeling really confident and comfortable in your own skin, and actually like showing up as you to these sales conversations, and not showing up as this like scripted version of whatever product or whatever company that you may be representing. People can smell that from a mile away, you know what I mean? And so it was funny because there was this saying in our company that was always, basically we said, don't be weird. Like, don't show up to the meeting and be weird. Like, just friggin' be you. You know what I mean? Like, people can tell when you're not being yourself. And so I think that that's where it has to start. It's like all of us need to go through training. We all, every company has different products and training that you need to do. But when you show up to that conversation, like, that takes a step back. And like, first, you just need to show up as authentically yourself, so that that person across from you can actually like feel like they trust you, you know what I mean? Because you're actually being genuine. Because that's the first step to sales. I mean, people don't buy from people that they don't trust. And so some people, especially newer to sales, sometimes forget that essential part, and they'll just go right into the sales process, or right into what I call, showing up and throwing up all over the client or all over the customer. And then the customer looks at them and they're like, I don't even know a thing about you. Like, why would I spend, thousands of dollars? So it's really making that connection first is the most important thing.
Yeah, cool. I know I always tell people, just go and have a conversation. You're just sharing, you're conversing, you're telling them a little bit about you, you're finding out about them and seeing if it's actually a fit. And I love that saying, we were laughing about it earlier, throwing up, showing up, throwing up, because it is so true. They get so worried about the sale that they forget there's another person there, and that
Yeah.
connection actually has to happen. Do you have some tips if people are feeling really nervous going into a sales situation? How can they remind themselves and make sure they're showing up as themselves and not being weird?
Yeah. Well, I think the first part is I always remind people, like, if you set a meeting with a prospect or with a client, like, first of all, they're already interested. And I know that sounds really simple, but like, some people forget that, like, the hardest part is almost over because they've already agreed to meet with you, right? So it's like, first of all, remember that, like, this client is already interested in what you have to say. Really, you're just going, like you said, Vanessa, you're going to have a conversation. I always say, you're going to make a new friend. And if this product or service is a good fit for them, fantastic. But if it's not, you know what? That's totally cool as well. And I honestly, like, I would coach my teams to even like say that, from the get-go, because it takes off so much pressure off of that initial meeting when the prospect or the client kind of feels like, oh, cool. Like, okay, so she's here. She's obviously going to explain what she does or what the product is, whatever that person is selling. But I appreciate that they let me know, like, hey, if this isn't a good fit, that's totally cool too. You know what I mean? And so it's really like having that mental check with yourself, like, hey, they're interested. So let's just go have a conversation and see if it's a good fit. If it is, awesome. If it's not, that's totally cool too. But I'm still going to have a good conversation with this person.
Awesome. How important is it for you to actually believe in the product that you're selling?
Yeah, I mean, that is absolutely huge. I mean, and I've seen it on both sides, right? Through the last 10 years. I've experienced it firsthand too when I wasn't super passionate about selling something. And, that's where this whole disconnect of like being authentically you comes into play, right? It's not to say that you can't have some initial success, because you can. Like, you actually can fake it at first, but the reality is that it's not going to get you far, and it's not sustainable. And especially if you're in any sort of industry, or if you have a product that's long term, clients are going to be able to tell that you're not passionate about what you're doing. You know what I mean? So can you like sell something like without being passionate about it? I mean, technically, yeah, but I guarantee that it's not sustainable, and your clients probably will see very quickly, maybe after you make the sale, that you don't actually believe in it. And then that sets up a really uncomfortable client relationship. Because then they're like, this person doesn't even, all they wanted was just to make the sale, and they don't even believe in their product. Now, on the flip hand, on the opposite side, when you are super passionate about your product, I mean, that's when obviously things become effortless, right? Like, you don't even feel like you're selling, because you're able to just approach these meetings as, hey, I'm just going to talk about what I'm passionate about. I just want to share this with you. This is an opportunity. And honestly, like, the best sales meetings, I always tell people, the way to know if you've had a really good sales conversation or presentation is at the end of the meeting, if the prospect is actually asking you, do you think I'm a good fit for this? And the reason that that's so powerful is you did such a great job of building value for what you're representing, that they actually are asking. They're not even like waiting for you to ask for the sale. They're asking you like, hey, do you feel like I'd be a good fit for this? Because I really would love to be a part of this program. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's all like the subtle shifts in just the tone that you set from the get-go. And 100%, I mean, if you don't believe in your product, like, it's really for the long run, like it's a waste of time. It's a waste of your energy. It's a waste of the client's energy. You'd be so much more suited actually talking about something that you are passionate about.
Yeah, cool. Can you give us some tips on how to build that connection when we are selling, so that at the end of the conversation, they say to us, is this a good fit for me? I'm really into this.
Yeah. I would say so the first part is really understanding that when you show up to these meetings, I mean, it's all about the initial building connection and building rapport with that individual or with that client. So not just jumping into your presentation, but actually taking 5 to 10 minutes, asking them questions like, hey, how did you start this business? Or tell me more about what got you into this, or tell me more about just where you at. It's not so much about, and I tell people this all the time in sales, and this is why sales has a bad rep, because some people think that it's all about what you say, and it's not. It's all about how you're saying it. And if that person across from you can sense that you're genuinely interested in them as a person, you know what I mean? Especially if you're in any sort of industry that's a high ticket item or like a high ticket value offer, do they feel heard and understood by you, from the get-go, to even set the tone for you to tell them about your product or your service. So that's the first part, is just building that rapport in a genuine, authentic way. And then the second part would be making sure that you're leading the conversation. And in any sales conversation, the minute that balance kind of gets off, where the other person is leading the conversation, your chances of, wrapping up that whatever you're offering them that day are really, really slim, because you've given the power. They're already in their heads, and they're leading the conversation, and it's really hard to go back from that.
Yeah.
So it's being that leader, which is obviously something that I coach on, but showing up as that leader and leading the conversation, because ultimately, that's what you're there to do. You know what I mean? You're there to lead the conversation. You're the one that's showing up with something to present to them, so they kind of need to be guided. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's the essential thing too, is just making sure you're maintaining the control of it in a genuine way, not in a overbearing way, but that you're the one moving the conversation along, not the other person.
Yeah, I think that's so key, because you still want to take them through a journey in the conversation, right? I always talk to my clients about bringing them through a journey of, what you talked about in the beginning. 100%, you want to know about them, you want to know where they're at, and then you want to see what are their challenges and can your product actually solve that. So if you can't take them through that journey and they're trying to ask you questions and lead, it's really hard to follow and to end up closing the sale. So I love the way you say that. How are some ways that people can feel more confident in themselves to be a leader and to show up as a leader in these types of situations, whether it be sales or within their teams?
Yeah, that's a great question. The first thing that comes to mind is just really knowing what you stand for. Like what do you represent? I mean, what state of being are you all about? You know what I mean? Like, regardless of who comes into contact with you, if it's a potential new client or if it's your team, like, is that congruent with each other? You know what I mean? I mean, you think of like some of the best leaders that we've ever seen, like Martin Luther King or, Mother Teresa, and it's like, I guarantee that like the person that they were in, when they were doing these amazing things was the same type of person that they were at home. You know what I mean? And so it's like how you do one thing is how you do everything. So really honing in on, okay, I'm a professional. What are the states of being that I'm committed to as a person? So for example, for me, like I'm committed to being courageous, powerful, and loving. That's like a contract that I've made with myself. And so my goal with that is that anybody that comes into contact with me, whether it's a client or whether it's somebody I'm leading, that they're going to get that same Amanda. You know what I mean? So I think that is it's getting clear on what do you want to represent, every day, day in, day out, and what are the states of being that you're most committed to being.
That's awesome. So if you're listening to this or watching this, I want you to think of your 3 words. What are your 3 words that you want to commit to live by in all areas of your life? And they almost act as those pillars. And if something comes your way, you can always use those pillars to check and reflect back and think, am I being that? Am I being that state of being in my life? And is that someone I want to be? I love how you say that. And it almost becomes a mantra and or a morning routine where you can always reflect back to those 3 words.
It really is. Yeah. And it's almost like a guiding principle, because we all fall off track. We all have the days that we, don't feel our best. But when you can always go back to something and say, okay, like, what are my ways of being? Like, I am a courageous, powerful, loving woman, or courageous, powerful, loving leader, like whatever resonates with you. And it just brings you back, to like kind of go inward and be like, all right, like, what's one thing I can do right now to show up in a courageous way? Maybe that is, picking up the phone and calling a teammate that, you have to have a difficult conversation with. Or maybe it's, if you're a business owner, like with an online business, like showing up on Facebook Live, because it's not something you're super comfortable with. But it just continues to be like that guiding light for you.
Yeah.
So I think that's, and especially if you're a leader of a team, the biggest thing with that is, in order to get people to trust you, like they want to feel like you're consistent, right? Like they don't want to feel like they have a leader that's a Jekyll and Hyde, and it's like, oh, what's Amanda going to be this day, and what's she going to be that day? You know what I mean? Like people want to work with and get behind people that they trust and like can expect the same thing from. You know what I mean? So it trickles down to everything you do at home, at work, to the team that you lead. Is everybody seeing the consistent version, and the best version of really what you can be offering?
What other qualities make really strong leaders? So we have consistency, trust. What else should people be striving for or reflecting on if their team dynamics can be improved?
Yeah, I think as a leader, obviously, like checking your ego at the door. So being humble is a huge thing. I say this all the time, but one of my favorite things about coaching people, whether it's a team or individuals, is like, I'm still learning every day. You know what I mean? So I feel like the best leaders have that mindset of, doesn't matter what my title is, but like, I'm always growing, I'm always learning. And it's like, sure, I might be coaching this person, but like they have something to teach me too. You know what I mean? So just remaining humble and always keeping your ego at the door. And then I would also say one of the other biggest things is the ability to delegate and empower others. So I should say like empower others through delegation. And this is something that you can do this at home, even if maybe you don't have a team yet, but you have a family, or if you do have a business owner, this definitely applies. But, actually giving everybody a role, you know what I mean? And really like seeing them in their highest version possible that maybe they don't even see themselves yet, and giving them opportunities to step into that, and like being like, hey, like you're really good at, you know, you're really good at the phone approach. Would you mind being like the captain of the phone approach for the team? You know what I mean? And going on and like giving tips on that. And it's amazing. And again, this could be with your family too, with your kids. It's like, it's amazing how showing that confidence in somebody and then giving them a role can just do for their own belief in themselves, which ultimately the highest performing teams, that's what you really want. You want a team where everybody feels like they're bought into what you're creating. They're behind the leader, they're supporting the leader's vision, but then they know their role, they know their place, and they're excited to give from that because somebody believed in them.
Totally. It also connects to what we were talking about in sales, is that you really have to understand who you're talking to. So if you don't understand your team and you don't know what they're good at, you can't properly delegate and actually make that role that empowers them.
Yeah. And it was that, so I gave a workshop last week to a group of women here in Austin, and they were all in like mid to senior level leadership positions. And one of the things that I shared with them that I've done every year that was so beneficial, and that I would suggest anybody does this as you have a team, but it was super simple. I created a Google Doc, and I had like 7 to 10 questions on there, but a couple of them were around this kind of like asking them about their states of being and being like, hey, what was your favorite thing about what happened last year? What was your least favorite thing about what happened last year, in their business? And then asking them, okay, for this year, like if you could describe the 3 words that would make this like the best year yet ever for you in your business, what would those words be? And the reason that that's so powerful is like, again, you're getting your team to buy into like their own vision, like you're helping them, you're guiding them to craft their own vision. And then what's super powerful is at the end of that year, or however long you want to do it for, 6 months, whatever, you can actually bring that back up and they can read their own words and be like, wow, like that, I really wanted that to like happen and look like it did. And because I feel like a lot of people know about goal setting and all that, but not everybody keeps track of it. Like, let's be honest, right? So like if you're in a leadership position, like make it easy for them, make a Google Doc, like keep it, and then bring it back to them like a year from now, and then talk through like, hey, like, let's talk about these states of being. Like, do you feel like that happened for you this year? If it did, why? If it didn't, like, what were the gaps? And that's where you get that close relationship with your team, because you know them, like their desires. It's not just about the numbers, it's not just about their tasks, but like, what do they see for themselves, and how are you as a leader supporting that?
Yeah. It gives you such good feedback as a leader as well, so that you can see where those gaps are. I want to go back to your 3 words of being and courage. Can you share how you've been courageous in the last week, the last month, whatever you want to share?
Gosh, yeah. Well, so it's funny you ask that, because I have to say, honestly, like, that's one of the words that people like tell me that I am the most. And for the longest time, I honestly didn't see that for myself. But now looking, like, if I even just look at like the last decade, right? I mean, gosh, like so much courage. I mean, I live in Austin, Texas now. One of the biggest life changes that I did, which is now kind of coming to an end because I'm moving back to Chicago. But, 6 years ago, I quit my corporate job and decided just to move to Austin, Texas on a whim, started a franchise business, like didn't know a soul in Austin, Texas, sold everything I owned, didn't even have a car because I like had a company car that I had to get back. And then I've built an incredible thing here. The last 6 years, like I built multiple franchises and like went into the corporate role. And like, so some people look at that and they're like, holy crap. Like, I mean, like that was so courageous. And it's funny because at the time I didn't consider it. Like I was like, well, I just like wanted an adventure and
Can we go? I want to go over this. I don't want to just skim over
yeah,
it because I
yeah.
think there's so many people that might be listening to this thinking, I want to move cities. And I either don't have the courage or there's all these things. Bring us back to that time when you just wanted to move out to Austin. Tell us a little bit more about your thought process and your decision-making process to just finally make the move, which you say, on a whim.
Yeah. Well, I think at that point, the one thing I knew was that I knew that I wasn't meant to live the traditional, like, I don't want to say cookie cutter because that almost has a bad connotation with it, but like, I didn't want to live the expected, like, very, like, expected life, you know what I mean? And so when I decided to make that move, I was like, you know what? It's now or never. I was 26 at the time. I was like, I've lived in Chicago my entire life. I've always thought about living in Texas. For somebody else out there, maybe it's California, maybe it's somewhere you've always dreamed about going. And what helped me was I was like, you know what? What's the worst that's going to happen? I'm like, if I move out there and I just freaking fall on my face, like I can always move back. You know what I mean? Like you can always move back, but like what you can't do is like you can't get back like that opportunity to step into the unknown and like that opportunity to really push your limits and just try something new and have an adventure, and so and it doesn't even have to be a big move across the country. Like I feel like there's so many opportunities we get in life that are an adventure or like an opportunity waiting to be had, and we second guess ourselves, and so I did take that risk. I literally didn't know a soul, found my apartment on Craigslist. like, so like looking back, I'm like, what was I thinking? But you know what? It all worked out. And I think that that's like, that is truly the one thing deep down. And I know not everybody always believes this, but I do believe it's so true for every person that like you're always going to figure it out. Like you're always going to be okay. Like I knew that I would figure it out, whatever was to come. And so now it's 6 years later, and I look to like what I've accomplished, and it is pretty amazing, right? Like now that I can look in hindsight, and that's always the most beautiful place, right? Like when you can look back and see like, wow, I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but like you end up growing so much through that process, and like some of the experiences I had, I wouldn't have had if I would have stayed in Chicago and kept my corporate, pharmaceutical job. So yeah, it's having that faith that everything's going to work out, and also knowing you can always change course at any point. You know what I mean? I think some people get really nervous about making a decision because they feel like it locks them in, and it doesn't. Like, we're evolving human beings, and even if you do make the decision and then a year later you realize it's not right for you anymore, like that can happen too. So just be open to like, hey, like this feels right. I'm going to go for it. And if it turns out to not be the right fit, like you can always change course. Right.
Sure.
So,
Why do you know that it's now time for you to move back to Chicago?
so yeah, for me, it's, I think it does come from really knowing yourself. And for me, it's just a heart pull, my family's there. So that's like the main thing. I'm at a phase in my life where I'm really looking forward to being close to family again, and creating more memories. You know what I mean? I feel like the last 6 years I've been really fortunate because I've created all these memories kind of on my own, like this like pioneer, like doing all these different things, and it's been amazing. But I'm ready for like the next phase. And that's what I was talking about before. Like, it's okay to want different things at different points. And I think that some people forget that. Like, and that goes for whether it's a job, whether it's a relationship, whether it's whatever. Like, what's right for you right now may not be right for you 6 years from now, like my case, or next year. So I know for me right now, the right thing is to move home, and be close to family. And I still have my business I can take anywhere. The VIP woman is something that I'm able to do anywhere. So that comes from really knowing your own heart and like following that pull, and that's where the pull is leading me. So
That's awesome. And you're able to help so many people through the VIP Woman. And I love what the VIP Woman stands for. The V is vision, impact, and purpose. And you're
yeah.
helping so many women live that. Can you tell us about a little bit more about the VIP Woman and what they can expect? Go follow her on Instagram, and your website is the VIP Woman. So go check her out. Tell us a little bit more about that and what you're creating with that community.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I founded this platform last year, it really came out of a need that I saw was a legit gap in the marketplace. Um, I don't know about you, Vanessa, but like you've probably heard from people, like I've seen that as you get more successful, sometimes you feel less support. And so I know what was so helpful for me over the years was actually being able to reach out to outside coaches that were outside of my organization. And I really wanted to create a platform where it would make that easy for women. So whether it is one-on-one coaching, which is, that's one of the things that I offer, and I believe so much in it because that's what I attribute so much of my success to, was reaching out to outside coaches outside of my organization. But then more importantly, just being a safe like platform for women to actually talk about, what it's like to be a woman in corporate America or a business owner, where there's just a lot of different dynamics of being a leader these days, right? And I feel like as a conversation that's not had enough. And I wanted to create a platform that women could go for resources, advice, community, that are all for women that are in leadership positions or aspiring to be in a type of leadership role, to have that safe place. Because at the end of the day, like, I don't care what company you work for. I mean, I worked for a phenomenal company the last 6 years, like, have nothing bad to say about that company. But what I realized, even the best companies, it's it's really hard to, when you're a successful woman, man, whatever, it's hard to really have those honest conversations about your career and what you desire and what you really want with your superiors sometimes. And there's always dynamics, always. There's always going to be biases. And if you limit yourself to just that type of coaching and that type of mentorship coaching within your organization, it's really kind of like boxing you into your potential, truly. And I think, and I know that for a fact. And so that's why I'm so passionate about women having a place that they can go for coaching and mentorship and community to talk about those things.
Yeah, that's awesome. So if you resonate with what we were chatting about today, especially way of being, I know you have a free resource that people can get. What is this resource and where can they find it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you the link for it. So it's a downloadable PDF, and it's called The Steps to Being Rather Than Doing. And the reason I created it was because, like, as a high performing woman, like, I know that it's something that a lot of highly successful women struggle with, is stepping into the being rather than just the doing. And what it actually takes them through is a shortened, condensed version of my coaching program, which follows the VIP pillars. So the first part is all about your vision. The second part is about impact. And then the third part is about purpose. So all three of those are actually in this PDF that they can download. I'll send you the link for totally free. But it gives them a taste to, like, maybe some things that they haven't been thinking about quite yet, to their potential and really what they could be stepping into with their leadership.
Awesome. And if you're listening to this, can you say the link out loud, or can they find it on your website,
Yes,
thevipwoman.com?
it's on my website, but it's also bit.ly/the VIP playbook.
Okay, awesome. So go check that out. She is the VIP woman, and I'm so glad that you could be here with us and talk to us about this leadership and sales. And these are such important conversations that are obviously monumental in us as women coming together and moving forward. And you can see that you're also doing this within your community, which I resonate with so much. So I'm really glad that we know each other and
Yep,
that you're helping so many women to continue to get into that being and their most confident self, so that they can step up as leaders and guide and lead teams and communities, so that we can continue to be stronger together. So
absolutely. Yeah,
thank you
it's
so
such an
much.
important conversation. So thank you so much for having
Yeah.
me.
Is there anything else you wanted to say before we check out for the day?
I would just say, I mean, with the vein of leadership, that regardless of where you're at in your life, whether you are in a business, whether you're a stay-at-home mom, whether you're wanting to start a business, like, everybody has the ability to be a leader. It's not something that's reserved for just, this small group of individuals. And if you really look at it, like, at any given point in time, you're always inspiring somebody. So don't discredit your ability to be a leader right where you are.
So cool. I love it. So go out and inspire someone today. Thanks, Amanda. We'll chat with you
Thank
soon.
you.
Bye.
Bye.